I know a lot of you out there are homeschooling right now, maybe against your will because of COVID-19 pandemic, or for other reasons. Maybe you just want to try homeschooling and you're thinking, how do I even start? So I wanted to make this video to let you guys know some simple steps that you can do to prepare to homeschool your kids. They're easy, anyone can do these, and it will make the journey towards homeschooling much smoother for your family. The first step in preparing to homeschool is to figure out what learning phase your child is in. So what am I talking about here? Now, I like to follow the Thomas Jefferson homeschool philosophy, and in that, we talk about the learning phases that children go through. The first is the core phase, and that's ages 0 through 7 or 8. And that phase has a lot to do with family relationships and learning a good work ethic as far as doing household chores and learning right and wrong. So principles of morality that are important for your family. And we do this not through really structured, rigid daily schedules with our young kids. In the core phase, we can schedule for sure. We learn through everyday activities that we're going to do anyway, through play, through preparing meals, through taking care of the house, having fun with siblings and with friends. And this is different from a lot of school philosophies that exist today, where even kindergartners come home with hours of homework and schoolwork to do. And I feel personally that that heavy load of academic work at such a young age does not encourage a love of learning. In fact, I feel like it suffocates kids' natural curiosity and love of learning. So in the core phase, if your kids want to learn something, absolutely learn it with them, but we don't want to be forcing academic tasks on children. So that's ages 0 through 7. The next phase is the love of learning phase. And something to remember about this and all the phases is that the title of the phase is not necessarily what happens throughout the whole time. Rather, it's the end result that you want as your child is leaving that phase. So with the love of learning phase, which is ages 8 through 11 or 12, depending on your child, this is where you want your children to end up with a love of learning. So don't stress out and think they can't enter the love of learning phase yet. They don't love such and such subjects. And not everyone's going to love all the same subjects. And that's part of the purpose of this phase, is not to force your child. This phase is not about learning every single subject you can think of. It is about introducing these subjects, okay? So your kids have some experience and get a taste for what they like, and absolutely study subjects that your children are interested in and go as deep into the subjects as your children want to go. One characteristic of your child being ready to move from the core phase to the love of learning phase is that your child will have really intense learning sessions, I guess I could say, or their interests will be really intense for a short amount of time, but then they might burn out quickly and want to move on to something else. I know I've definitely seen that with my kids, where they get really excited about something, learn a few things, and then, okay, I'm good. And they go on to want to learn something else. And that's very normal at that age group. Following the love of learning phase, we have a transition to the scholar phase. And here, your child gets more used to being independent. And in the scholar phase, you have a lot more independent work where your child directs the learning. And this can be done through coursework, independent study, or it can be a program you develop with your child, because you're absolutely still a guide and a facilitator for learning throughout all of these phases. Your child shouldn't be left out on their own. But this is step one, because how are you going to plan your homeschool if you don't know what style of learning your child needs to be doing at that time? Okay, so step one, identify your child's phase of learning. And if you want to know more about the phases of learning, I'll drop a link below that has a whole blog post that I've done on the phases of learning and what to expect in each of those. Step two is to make goals with your kids. And this is so important because how are you going to know what to do in homeschool if you don't know where you want to end up? It's kind of like that whole famous saying from the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, where she asks him which way she should go, and he asks her where she wants to end up, and she doesn't know. So the Cheshire Cat says, well, it doesn't matter which way you go then, does it? So the same thing applies in homeschool. We want to know where we want our children to end up, meaning what characteristics do we want them to have, what skills do we want to focus on communication? Do we want our children to have a commitment to our family's morals? Do we want our children to have a love of learning? I know for me that one's very important. So once we have the goals set, it becomes much easier to fill in with the smaller goals along the way and to know what we need to do in our homeschool because we know where we want to end up at the end of this process. Step three, research the options you have in homeschooling. And this one can seem overwhelming too, but I have a few tips on my blog post, which I've linked below, that's about these 7 steps on ways you can research. Some of those being look up reviews for homeschool curricula, and those are super helpful. Or talking to other homeschool parents. That one's so valuable because you get real life experience from people you know and trust, and they can be an amazing resource. I know for me, our family members who homeschooled provided extra materials that they weren't using anymore, curricula, worksheets, CDs with songs for geography, and it made preparing to homeschool so much less of a burden on me because I knew I had their help and support through that. And then as you get into homeschooling, having those bridges built from the beginning helps so much if you want to start a homeschool co-op, or maybe not start one, but join one. You'll have connections and people who you know to talk to. Doing learning groups or having someone for your kids to socialize with, that can be very valuable as well. And knowing other homeschooling parents and having their support. Step 4 is to pick which direction you want to go in your homeschool. So keep in mind though, picking a direction doesn't mean you have to stick with it forever, but at least to get started, it's a good idea to have in mind how you want to style your homeschool. So I know that I've said before that we love the Thomas Jefferson philosophy, and we've applied that for sure, but we've used other strategies as well. In some ways we unschool, so you'll see on my blog I call it unschool-ish, because yeah, we use some school techniques that we can't really call ourselves totally unschool. So I think that involving a few different strategies is totally fine and totally normal. I think actually that happens with most homeschool families, is that they're not just hardcore one strategy, one philosophy. But it is a good idea to decide which ones you like better and eliminate the ones that you don't think will work for your family. Step 5, expect change. Like I said just a minute ago, you'll pick a direction, but you will end up changing and adjusting that direction. So that can be hard for some of us to admit that what we're doing isn't working. And so it's helpful before you even start, just accept that your homeschool will adjust as you go. Your child's needs, they will change. If you have more than one child, their needs will vary from one child to the next. So it is important to be flexible, and this is true in any educational venture. I know as a teacher, it happened every day from one period to the next. I would need to change my lesson plan. I would need to adjust it according to the students in my class. So even in homeschool, where we have the same students every day and they're our own kids and we know them really well, we can't expect everything to go as we plan. So just plan for change. Step 6 is super important, and it's one that I know I forget, unfortunately, and so it's a good reminder to me, and I think a lot of parents fall into this boat. And this step is to dedicate ourselves to learning along with our kids. And that's because we want to inspire our kids, and really the best way to do that is to model for them. That means whatever we're asking them to do, we should be doing it ourselves, or we can't expect them to do what we ask. You can't do the do as I say and not as I do. It doesn't work. So dedicating yourself from the beginning to picking up a new skill, take a class, learn something, even if it's picking up books to read and reading in your spare time and letting your kids see that you're reading. Talk to them about what you're reading. Let them see you talk to other people about what you're learning and how much you love it, how it brings you joy. That will make a bigger difference in your kids' homeschool experience than anything else. So keeping that as part of our planning is very important. And lastly, I had to come back to this one more time just to remind you, things will not go as you plan. So we need to reevaluate regularly throughout our homeschool. And this is as we're actually getting into the homeschooling part. Just remind yourself that every now and then, check on how things are going, do some self-evaluation, think about how your kids are responding to your lessons, see if there's some activity you can plan that'll change things up or change up the schedule, maybe even change the philosophy or the curriculum, which can get expensive. I hope you don't have to do that. But oftentimes changing our teaching style is really what's needed. And it could be that your kids have moved on to the next phase of learning and they need something new. So, or maybe you tried to move into the next phase of learning and they weren't ready yet. You'll need to change according to your children's needs, because those needs will change as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share the video, and subscribe. Visit the links below to see my blog for more details and more tips that I didn't have time for in the video.